So I was on a music video set recently for an artist named Orion Sun, and the DP, the cinematographer, Eric Slush, had a camera called the Wide Lux. This is a camera that I've seen before in 120 format, maybe back in 2019. It is a panoramic film camera, and after he took a couple photos on set, I just had to find one and make a video on it. So this is the Wide Lux. According to the internet, the 7 stands for the decade which it was made, so this one's from the 70s. This camera is a super wide angle, 140 degree, 35mm panoramic film camera. It is one of the coolest, most unique cameras I have ever put my hands on in my entire life. The Wide Lux doesn't just have a wide lens, it has the lens that when you fire the shutter moves from left to right, painting the image onto your 35mm negative in the camera. This version has 3 shutter speeds, 250th of a second, 125th of a second, and a 15th of a second. It has a 26mm f2.8 lens that again moves from left to right when you take a photo. It opens up to 2.8 and it stops down to f11. It's made out of this really nice metal that almost feels like it's made out of a rock. There's so many talented artists that have used this camera in the past, but the one that really caught my eye was the actor Jeff Bridges. Yeah, the dude from The Big Lebowski, the Marshal in True Grit, the main villain in Iron Man 1. Jeff Bridges is a huge fan of the Wide Lux, and he brought this camera with him onto all of these sets and just made these unique, beautiful photos. One of my favorites is this shot on the set of The Big Lebowski in the bowling alley. Another favorite is this selfie he took on the set of True Grit. Amazing. What's super cool about Jeff Bridges and his love for the Wide Lux is that he hasn't stopped loving it. He's announced on his social media in collaboration with Silver Grain Classics that he's planning on bringing the Wide Lux back into production. Of course, there's no sort of release date for that camera, but in 2024 with cameras like the Pentax 17 and the Rollei 35 potentially releasing this year as well, it's safe to say that if Jeff Bridges brings the Wide Lux into production in 2024 or 2025, 2026, it'll be right at home with a bunch of new film cameras on the market. This Wide Lux belongs to my friend Sir, who is an incredible film photographer and filmmaker. He has a really amazing YouTube channel you should check out. Link in the description, you already know what it is. He told me that his needs a little bit of a massage after every shot you take, which is absolutely an interesting quirk, seeing as the lens moves unlike any other camera. I don't think there's anything else for me to yap about at this point. I think it's time for me to go shoot with the Wide Lux. I picked up the Wide Lux from Sir. He helped me load it with a roll of Cinestill 400D, and I snapped a photo of him, and it came out really cool. This first roll is my test roll to make sure that the camera even works before setting out to shoot some more adventurous stuff. When I scanned this first photo, I was like, oh, this camera is like a really beautiful piece of machinery and art. Like this is gonna be fun. But anyway, after I picked it up from Sir, I went to the studio for a full day shoot. I only picked it up one single time to photograph my friend Efrata when we were doing this concept with a portable haze machine. And I just took 2 photos of her, and especially in a studio setting like this, even though I didn't nail the focus, like this just turned out so cool. You can see from the green room on the right all the way to the C-stands on the left, and in the center there's just like this beautiful scene. It's almost like the coolest BTS photo I've ever done on one of my shoots. Here's one of my favorite images I shot on the Mamiya RB67 during that shoot. Check out the rest on my Instagram if you want. We're gonna hit a couple locations, but I feel like a good starting point is just my apartment. I've never really taken the time to photograph my apartment, and something that seems really cool with a camera with such a wide field of view like this is to try to photograph it from a perspective that I never even thought about photographing it from. I'm gonna start out by shooting handheld with this thing at 125th of a second, try a couple different angles, and I'm also gonna shoot a couple at a 15th of a second with the help of my tripod to keep it nice and steady at maybe like, we'll do 5.6 or something. So this is like the opposite angle to where I usually sit. I usually sit in a chair right here, and my bed is right behind the camera. And I think it'd be really cool to kind of, also my kitchen is here, exercise bike, things that are usually out of frame. I thought it would be really cool to try to shoot something from like right here so that I not only maybe get some of the table in the shot and the door and the bed and everything, but then like also like my semi-messy kitchen. I don't know, it could be cool. Obviously I can't shoot it while the camera's right here, so I'm gonna move it and then take the photo, but yeah, let's do 5.6 125. I switched between shooting with this camera handheld, which turned out amazing at 125th of a second. I think I was shooting at 5, 6. And then I put the camera on a tripod and shot a couple more, but honestly, they kind of all look the same, other than the ones where I intentionally used a higher aperture and a faster shutter speed of 2/50th of a second. These ones definitely came out a bit underexposed, but the color tonality of these is really like dope. Like it's completely different than the ones that I shot with the proper exposure, but I love them nonetheless. And I love this one in particular where I kind of stood in the doorway of my closet to my bathroom, because to get to my bathroom, you have to go through my closet, and you can see like the window in my bathroom, and then you have my entire bedroom showing in the rest of the scene. And that's just such an interesting perspective. And now for the second set of images that I shot like right here, facing, you know, my bed, I definitely overestimated how wide the camera would be, but nonetheless, these came out really cool as well. It's kind of cool like photographing it from that perspective, because I feel like anytime I try to take a photo from there, I obviously don't have a wide enough lens to kind of get the scope of what my eyes can see. This camera, I feel like, kind of just picks up like what your peripheral vision looks like in addition to what you're seeing, and that's really cool. Next, I met up with my friend Dea to shoot some photos of the 6th Street Bridge and try to photograph her with maybe some creative lighting in front of the bridge as the sun set. I started out with a roll of Cinestill 400D in the camera, and I just shot some photos of the bridge leading to downtown. What is really cool is when the light is directly hitting the lens of the camera, it obviously is only hitting the lens of the camera at certain points. So when the lens moves far enough that the light can't actually hit the lens, you get this dramatic cut off, which is what you see here on the right of this image. It's not something you get with any other camera, and that makes it really interesting. It almost looks like two different scans of the same image kind of stitched together. These photos are so cool because I've shot at this location before. I was just never really able to get the whole bridge in this way. I mean, it's a gorgeous shot. The light was perfect. You know, the sun was going down. I'm stoked about this. As we waited for the sun to set over the buildings, I turned away from the bridge and shot Dea in direct sunlight. These ones just feel like stills from a movie or something. If you took these images and put black bars on either side of them, they would look like a real like widescreen movie. I decided to load a roll of Cinestill 800T as the sun decided to go down, and I didn't put the back on securely. So Dea put her hands over my tote bag and kind of made a makeshift dark bag for me to reseat the back of the camera. And I knew I was gonna get a couple light leaks on a couple shots. What do you know? They actually came out pretty cool. Like this shot in particular turned out really beautiful, and I think that it's cool that like you have a little bit of a light leak on both sides of her, but she's properly exposed. Some of the images I was not as lucky, and there's a big light leak just right in the middle, or, you know, like going through the entire frame, but these turned out really nice. Another thing I wanted to try is putting Dea in the absolute peripheral vision of this camera, taking the photo and seeing how much it warped her. And it didn't warp her really at all. Like, she looks normal in this corner because the lens was facing her starting off, and then it moved across the frame. I thought this was just such a beautiful perspective and interesting way of capturing someone in a scene. With the last light, before it got pretty dark out, I put the Wide Lux on a tripod, and I wanted Dea to walk through the frame while at a 15th of a second to see what happened. This first attempt kind of looks like any other 35mm photo where somebody's moving, but this next one is where it gets really interesting. There's not a single part of the image where you can actually see her face, and she kind of just turns into what looks like mush. And then I had her run at the last second, and then you see her at the end of the frame over there. This is super experimental and weird, but I mean, it's interesting. It's cool. After the sun went down, I put a roll of Kodak's P3200 in the Wide Lux. I wanted to try a roll of black and white. After being inspired by all of Jeff Bridges' photographs that he made while on these sets, I honestly should have thought about the fact that I couldn't remember when I bought this roll. Pretty sure it might be expired, and also P3200 means I think it has a base ISO of 1000, which means to get it to 3200, you've got to push it. So I pushed this in development. I started out by photographing some freeway shots at a 15th of a second at, I believe, f8. I had the camera on the tripod, and they almost look like paintings because of how grainy they are. I also shot one of downtown with the bridge, and it's really beautiful and contrasty as well. Lastly, I went over to my friend Willem's house to photograph him in his studio space. to finish up the roll. I really thought these photos were gonna turn out nice. My light meter was saying I had more than enough light at f8. I was reading proper exposure at 1/125th of a second, so I was like, oh, these are gonna come out exposed great. But they also came back super grainy, and that might just be the nature of the film, but it also might be because of the fact that I pushed it and it was expired. So I'm not sure. There's something nice about them, and my favorite shot is this selfie that we took. They are definitely a little too grainy for my liking. And those were my first 4 rolls with the Wide Lux. From starting out with a test shot of Sir, to a couple photos of my friend Efrata in the studio, to trying to document my apartment in some pretty unique and interesting ways, and then to photographing Dea at the 6th Street Bridge, making some photos of downtown, taking some photos of her, with some interesting lighting and trying some experimental stuff with movement and a slow shutter speed, to finally putting a roll of 3200 speed black and white film in the camera, photographing some night scenes and also Willem's apartment. I have a lot of love for these images. As someone who's been shooting a lot of like studio portraiture and doesn't ever think about things from this perspective, this was a very, very fun video for me to put together. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Wide Lux and the images that I made today. I hate to say it because I absolutely have enough cameras, but I think I want a Wide Lux now. What do you think? Do you want to try out a super wide angle film camera like this, or are you gonna stick to your normal traditional 35mm and 120 cameras? Let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys next week for another video. Peace. Thanks for being here.